Woo, 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 woo. 14, or people can come up with all statistics to prove anything, Kent. 14% of all people know that, said Homer Simpson. Truth. We're going to talk about statistics a little bit here, but actually, really just looking at graphs in general. So section 10B we're going to do here is just describing qualitative graphs. So we talked a little about a qualitative graph is a graph that just shows the general comparison between two quantities. That's something we learned last time. A learning target for today is to analyze a graph and qualitatively describe a relationship between the two qualities. So it's a couple things to be successful today. We want to be able to break a graph into chunks, describe the steepness or the rate for each chunk, and then use words to tie to those two quantities shown on the graph. So let's start with this situation here. It says, so let's try to make sense of this problem first. It says, students in Mr. Blanco's class have 3 weeks to complete their science projects. These graphs show how much of the project 2 students have completed each day during this 3-week period. Describe what each graph shows. Okay? So first of all, let's just think about the problem in general. What are we talking about? What are we trying to find? Well, we're talking about these kids doing a science project, and there's a graphs for each of them comparing the time or the number of weeks that they spent working compared to the amount of the project they completed in each section of those weeks. One's for Lynn and one's for Amy. So what we're trying to figure out is just a way to describe the graph and maybe kind of make sense of how much they did and when. So let's do that. Let's describe it. So if I would look at this, I would maybe describe it as, well, I mean, it looks like Lynn. We could maybe describe it as like this is 1 week, this is 2 weeks. It doesn't say the number of weeks, it just says it as weeks go on. If we said this is our first week, this first chunk, looks like he got a lot of work done in that first chunk. It was really going up. And then after that first week or week and a half, he just stopped working. He got to where he needed to get, and he was done. So it looks like he did a lot of his work right away. There was steepness there. It showed the rate of his work was very steep. A lot of work the first week, but then it leveled off. Whereas Amy, if we wanted to break it into chunks like that, she maybe did a very tiny bit in that first week, tiny bit again that second week, and then she started kicking it at the end. And again, if you look at this, they ended up getting like the same amount of work done. It says amount of science project completed. They ended up at the same. It's just one of them worked on it a lot at the beginning, one of them worked on it a lot at the end. And that's what we're looking at. We're trying to look at a graph and just be able to explain, describe, and understand what it's saying. So what you could do, and what I would suggest, is again breaking the graph into chunks. Doesn't have to be 3; it could be 4. I don't. It said it was a 3-week period, so breaking it into 3 weeks would work great. And if you look at Lynn's graph, like we said, the first third is very steep. So that's a word we're talking about here, steepness. It's very steep, which means the rate of change is high. Whereas the first and second sections of the graph for Amy's was close to being straight. So very low steepness or low rate. Second week for Lynn says it starts to gradually increase and then straighten out, and then it's almost a straight line here. So again, that would be a low rate of work completed. And the third section is steep here, so that's a high rate. So they kind of flip-flopped. And that can help us describe maybe the situation. You can make up your own situation for that based on the information that you found in a graph. So where it says solve it says you can use your analysis to write a description of each graph. So here's a suggestion for how you can write it. It says each of the thirds represents 1 week. So again, we're looking right here. Lynn's graph is steep in the first third and somewhat flat in the rest. That means that she did most of her work on her science project in the first week. Amy's graph is the opposite. The steep section is in the last third. She did most of her work of the project in the third week. And that's it. So when we're looking to describe things, we want to use some words like steepness and rate. Those are some key words that help us describe a graph based on what it looks like and also based on what it actually means. Some other words that we could use would be flat or level, leveling out. Oops. I was thinking of the word straight, but flat. You could also use horizontal or vertical. Those are some other good words when describing, if there are any horizontal or vertical lines. Um, Gradual. If it's a gradual increase, that's different than a fast or quick increase or decrease. Fast, quick. Another one for gradual could be slow. But again, we're just trying to find different words that could describe a graph and give us some information about the situation itself. So that's what we're working on here. Again, that goes back to our success criteria of breaking the graph into chunks, describing the steepness or the rate, and then using words to make it to give a description to this situation. So why don't you turn the page over, go to this connect and reflect. I'd like you to look at this similar situation to what we just did. It's another graph. It's another situation. It says now you have to solve a similar problem to the one on the previous page. The graph shows daily sales of frozen yogurt at a new store during a 6-month period, starting on opening day. In April, sorry. Describe what is happening in terms of this situation for each section of the graph. So the section is broken down into sections. So it says it's 6 weeks. So you could describe it as, there's a first week, there's a second week, there's a third week, there's a fourth week, there's a fifth week, and then maybe it goes after that. But it's actually labeled A, B, C, D, E, and then we can say this one's F, but there's no F question about the F. So answer numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5 describing what's happening. Again, this is time going on based on frozen yogurt sales, so frozen yogurt sales over time. And then for number 6, use your answers to summarize what you think is going on with this graph. So answers of 2 to 5 to summarize what's going on in the graph. Okay? I'd like you to take some time to go ahead and do that. And then when you're done, I'd like you to also summarize the graph at the bottom. So that's all I've got for you for this section on describing qualitative graphs. Again, our learning target was to analyze a graph and qualitatively describe a relationship between two quantities. That's all.